All right. Already 2 episodes deep here in The Mandalorian in its first week. Don't get used to it. Don't get used to it. We're going to have to settle for 1 episode per week over the next 6 weeks. It doesn't look like they're stopping for holidays. Thanksgiving, yeah, who cares? It's the day after Thanksgiving. We're gonna have an episode anyway. What, 2 days after Christmas? What, you going to Grandma's house? It doesn't matter. You're gonna watch The Mandalorian.
That's right.
I like that. That's aggressive. I remember the days of Clone Wars and Rebels when they used to really wimp out around the holidays. You remember that? They'd like take a 2 or 3 week hiatus.
Right, at least.
Yeah, not doing that now. But oh my goodness, I literally just finished watching Chapter 2, Episode 2, The Child, as it's called, and I'm really, really excited to talk about this episode. Well, I mean, the everything that we've seen so far. If you listen to our first Mandalorian after show, it was a lot of just getting used to the fact that it's a Star Wars TV series. What do we think of how it looks, how it sounds, the whole Disney Plus launch, and of course that led us into things like it's a couple of the changes that were made to the 4K transfers of the Star Wars films that are on Disney Plus. But I'm really looking forward to this episode this edition of the after show, because I think we're going to be able to really tackle the plot, the characters, and the things that are actually happening in this series. And I am delighted to have not only my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack, but also our brother in the Force, my brother in the Force, Jimmy's brother in the flesh, Billy Mack, as well.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Back for more Mandalorian. Wow. Star Wars is back, baby. And we're seeing it in a big time with The Mandalorian. And all of the great Star Wars aesthetic and aliens and action. It's everything we know and love. And this episode was certainly filled with a lot of that stuff. Oh. Who hasn't always wanted to see a bounty hunter take on a sandcrawler one-on-one?
Dude!
And, I mean, this is right out of...
Oh, my gosh!
Nintendo Super Star Wars Level 2, when, as Luke Skywalker, you would climb up the side of the Skywalker.
Right.
The Sandcrawler. Sorry, guys. I got to get settled in here. Yeah, Jason, have a drink. Yeah. We'll all just take a deep breath here. We're all pretty excited because the Star Wars vibes are in the air. And that's what I was thinking when I was watching this episode. I tweeted about it. I said this episode had hints of Super Nintendo's Super Star Wars. It had hints of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, tank battle when they force Indy up against those rocks. And it also had hints of Adam West Batman when the Mandalorian scales the side of the Sandcrawler.
Oh, yeah.
I was expecting
Sammy Davis.
And yes, I was expecting Sammy Davis or Milton Berle to pop out from one of the panels on the side of the Sandcrawler alongside the Jawas. But all of that stuff is just scratching this itch I've had, this Star Wars fan itch I've had for longer than I could think of.
Guys, when I was watching it, and especially during the whole episode, but really when it kicked into high gear for me was the Mando solo attack on the Sandcrawler. I literally said out loud, and no one else was with me, I haven't had this much fun as a Star Wars fan, and I don't know how long. Maybe since some of those, mind-blowing episodes of the Clone Wars, when we started to really glimpse what potential that series had and what it was fulfilling. But then, look, I love animation. Don't get me wrong, but there's always going to be a big difference in how animation resonates in live action. This thing I was just completely riveted. I was just having a blast. And I thought, even though we don't want to use this series necessarily as a another whip against the sequel trilogy. I know it's not, there's some people that think it's the best and all that, but for me as a fan, this the last 39 plus another 30 minutes, 78 minutes, whatever it is, is given more back to me as a Star Wars fan than anything I've seen probably since Rogue One, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, as far as just having that pure Star Wars rush, when you eat certain brands of chocolate, you can always tell the cheap ones from the really good ones. And this one is a big, rich chocolate treat, man. I mean, it's Star Wars chocolate goodness. And it's like I said, it's really scratching the right itch. The vibe, the pacing. A lot of people are complaining about the half-hour length of this episode. And I'm not, because to me, there was no filler in here. There was no downtime. Everything made the story take one step further. And it's an adventure.
Yeah.
It's serialized adventure. And that's what Star Wars was. Each episode doesn't have to expand on the mythology to death. Sometimes it's just a good old-fashioned adventure story. And I like the fact that this was nice and tight and compact. We did get a little bit more information about the Mandalorian culture as it exists in this time period, when he says his weapons are a big part of his religion. And that's what I was talking about a lot last week on the show, is the fact that this era of Mandalorian, this particular sect of Mandalorian, because there's been so many different iterations of Mandalorian over the years, you'd have to assume in this universe that there are other ways of going about being a Mandalorian, different levels of different approaches to Mandalorian. I take note of this looking at Star Wars animation and how that culture has been variously depicted in different sort of ways, from the Duchess Satine and her legal rule on the planet Mandalore, which was a culture of pacifism. And then you had the Death Watch out on the moon, who were exiled because of the fact that they wanted to hold on to these warrior traditions. And then you had another sect of Mandalorian introduced to us in Rebels, which were the Protectors on Concord Dawn. And then you had the Imperial Commandos, who actually took over the Mandalorian.
You got to review, man. I mean, there's... it's a good thing you release some of those Filoni interviews about this, because I got to go back and review. It's all kind of right there, Mm-hmm. I feel like I need to do that, because I can't keep track of all this stuff.
Could we say that Dave Filoni has perhaps done or created more official Mandalorian canon than anybody else? I mean, between his work on
undoubtedly
on Clone Wars, I would think so. I mean, Karen Travis was a big fan favorite during the expanded universe days, but that all got turned on its head as a result of Clone Wars. So, I mean, Dave is I don't want to say he's reinvented, but I guess you could say invented Mandalorian culture. Jim, when you were kind of given that rundown, are you noticing any big changes between what we saw in the Clone Wars versus what and in Rebels, of course, that was a big part of Rebels, and what we're seeing here in the Mandalorian? Or do you think it's consistent?
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, there's more of an emphasis on the faith of being a Mandalorian on this show, and their relationship with their armor and their weaponry, how they never take off their helmets. These are all just little hints we've been picking up along the way, to me, which seem rather unique. Now, I have to admit, full disclosure, I did not pore over all of those Karen Travis novels. I have a working knowledge of what happened within them. But once Clone Wars launched, those stories primarily became rather mute, and I really consider my Mandalorian knowledge that comes from the introduction to the armor via Jango Fett, and then the history of the Mandalorian as it started to be told during the Clone Wars, the animated show. So I don't really take the expanded universe into account too much. There was a Jango Fett miniseries from Dark Horse Comics in the 2000s called something Target. I want to say maybe Hard Target or something like that. Jango Fett Hard Target. I'd have to look that up, but it was a 4 or 6 issue miniseries that really explained a lot about Jango Fett and his connection to the Mandalorian.
Are you talking about new canon, or is this old?
No, this is old stuff. This
old EU. So so this is EU. All
old
right.
EU. Yeah. Dark Horse, and this stuff is readily available on the Marvel Unlimited app. With the Star Wars license moving over to Marvel with the Disney acquisition, they also gained all the publishing rights to the Star Wars comic library, including that which was released by Dark Horse. Mm-hmm. So you can go back onto the Marvel Unlimited app and have access to that. Jango Fett, I want to say it was open season or something like that. Jango Fett. Are we? We're live everywhere, right? I bet people are.
Yeah, we're
shouting
live
at us on certain live chats and stuff. Let me pull up.
We're live across Facebook and YouTube. And by the way, while Jim's checking out the chat, I just want to say. I just want to.
Sorry,
you can't get used to it. I just want to say to those of you that are listening to the podcast. Of course, we love you. We want you to listen to the podcast. But if you follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You're going to get notifications when we decide to go live. We're a little bit late tonight. This is for our West Coast and mountain audiences. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. We're taking live calls. That's the whole spirit of this Mandalorian after show. I'm
looking at some of these live comments. Oh my goodness. Billy Mack is back there looking like a CIA agent is what they're saying. And then someone else claims Lord Tuhig says Puppet Lando has Billy Mack on his hand. So are you real or are you a puppet back there?
I know. Well, this is kind of weird. I am like a kind of a shadowy presence back here. Smaller version. I could be Puppet Billy. That's definitely true.
So, Jason, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was just
still trying
I was vamping
on the ground.
I was vamping. But I was just letting those know that are listening to the podcast that they have an opportunity to follow us on social media and find out when we're broadcasting live, because all of the episodes of the Mandalorian After Show from Rebel Force Radio are going to be recorded live, where we're going to be taking calls. Speaking of calls, I'm putting the number up on the screen right now. Please give us a buzz if you're within the sound of our voices. 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1737, and we will pop you on and you can sound off about Mandalorian. Before I give us the tale of the tape and talk about the specifics of this episode, Bill, I'm interested because we didn't have a chance to talk with you, at least I haven't, since the premiere earlier this week. Thoughts on, just in general, your first tastes of live-action Star Wars TV?
Yeah, right.
Well, there's so many. I'm connecting with this series, not so much with the expanded universe, because truth be told, I'm not much of an expanded universe guy. I'm pretty limited to the films, and I mean, I've watched everything. I've watched Rebels and everything like that, but I always return to the films. But there is one thing that I was really, really into, and that was the video game Bounty Hunter. And this show actually has a lot of that, a lot of flavor from that game. That game came out around the time of episode 2, so 2002, 2003, and had tons, you could collect bounties, and there were tons of Rhodians and Trandoshians and Aqualish, whatever they're called. The Walrus Men guys. And it just had such thick Star Wars flavor, and I really loved it because it had all these OT elements in it, and it was a prequel era game, and it was a fun storyline. And Jango Fett, it was the main character, and Zam Wessel was in it. It had the voice actors from the movie and everything like that. So anyway, I definitely am seeing a lot of hints of that, but dude, it just like it takes me back beyond that though. I mean, it's like the kid in me that was like fascinated with Jawas and these creatures and the weirdness of Star Wars. I'll tell you, the original Star Wars movie, I was always really fascinated by that first half of the movie that's on Tatooine. I mean, once they leave Tatooine, it really does become a different type of movie. You know, it's more of a space film after that. But the Tatooine stuff, I was always just so fascinated with the cantina scene in particular and the Jawas. In fact, I brought with me a little companion.
Oh,
can you see this? Can you hold that up?
Oh my gosh, look at that.
I bought I saved up my allowance and bought that. That's the actual figure that I bought in 1979 when I was
wow. That's the 12-inch. What we're seeing here on the screen is the 12-inch Jawa from Kenner back in 79. He's in great shape. Are any of those accessories repro? That is incredible shape.
That's all my original. That's everything. The gun and the whole thing is what I bought. Wow. I haven't done anything to that.
Even got the bandolier straps.
Yeah, I loved him, and I bought that remote control sandcrawler too. I was so fascinated with him, and you know, like this episode, to see inside the cockpit of the sandcrawler and to see it open up and all. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. I find all of it so fascinating and compelling, and it's funny too. There's something so humorous about a lot of what's going on in this show, and I really appreciate that. It's not. I mean, I enjoy the philosophy of Star Wars, but and this gets back to your original question. What I'm really resonating with on this show so far is what are you doing? Give me that. What's really resonating with me is that you know, so far there's really not a lot of thick philosophy. I'm ready for a breather from that, to be honest with you. I kind of just like a straightforward.
Okay, but is this gonna be straightforward? So let's get into it here.
Well, no. Well, that we don't.
Yeah, the tail of the tape. We're talking about Chapter 2 of The Mandalorian, Season 1. By the way, Season 2 already in production. Jon Favreau tweeting and Instagramming some images from the set already, and there was one shot that was shared that was Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and the notorious GL, the maker himself, George Lucas, all three of them on the set of Mandalorian. Now, I don't know if that particular photograph was of the three of those fellas on the set of Season 1, or if that is what we're seeing with Season 2.
I think that was Season 1. I don't believe they're shooting Season 2 yet.
They are. I know they are.
They are. They are currently in front of the cameras. Wow.
They are. So Favreau, if you check out his Instagram.
Yeah, this new fast-paced era of live-action Star Wars television.
Wait, right now they're still filming that?
Yeah, they've already fired up Season 2.
They just started with Season 2. Just started. So yeah. Favreau was tweeting that or Instagramming it, whatever. He had I think it was a stormtrooper helmet that was, sitting on a rock or something.
That's great news, because we don't have to wait a year and a half like we have to with a lot of these other Netflix and cable shows, right?
Well, I would love that. I mean, it would be great if
post-production.
Well, no, obviously they're really very much focused on building content for the Disney Plus library to build subscriptions, because while they did sell a ton of subscriptions and made a lot of money on the day of the launch, there's still, not even 10% of the Netflix audience that's out there now, and they won't stop until they overcome Netflix. If I know anything about Disney and their approach to making sure they're an entertainment empire,
like unbelievable number the other day. Like the day it launched, like 10 million people signed up or something like that.
I have not seen the numbers. I'm curious about that. Bill, you were they're
like
heralding this.
Million.
And that's not Mandalorian specifically. That's just Disney Plus signups, right?
Right.
Because I'm seeing the tech blogs really taking the piss out of Disney, complaining about the app, and and I'm not saying they don't have any grounds. I just have not had any problems on any of my devices with the app. I haven't had any problems.
I have only just via my Amazon Fire Stick. I think that's what you call it.
Oh, okay.
That I have plugged it to my TV.
Boy, when
my
you think
ridiculously expensive TV that can't get new apps because it was produced about a month before that became a thing.
Well, but that's why you have the Fire Stick, though. I got to tell you, you're not missing out on anything. The smart TVs, air quotes, that you get. The apps that they bake into those are never as good as if you get a set-top box like an Apple TV, a Roku, or a Fire Stick or something like that. But anyway, here we go. Tale of the Tape, Chapter 2, Mandalorian. This episode is called The Child. I don't believe Chapter 1 had a subtitle. I think it was just called Chapter 1.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of. You're right, Jason, a subtitle for Chapter 1, because I'm a stickler about that stuff. Because I have to keep all of this stuff organized,
right?
Yeah. So having a subtitle like "The Child" is very helpful, very helpful in my archiving. But
directed by Rick Famuyiwa, I think that's the best way I can. Famuyiwa, and this was written by Jon Favreau, as was Chapter 1. Also written by Jon Favreau. I'm wondering, did Jon write all of them? Do we know? I don't know if he wrote all of them.
Well, just judging off of things that we've heard from Filoni, and they did another big Q&A event in Hollywood.
It was a live stream of some sort, wasn't it? Yeah, on this.
Yeah, I think they screened the first two or three episodes, and Filoni and the cast did a sit down and took questions, and we'll have highlights of that on the weekly Rebel Force Radio next week. But what Dave Filoni has been saying is things like, "Yeah, it's crazy because I'll talk to Favreau on the phone, and we'll talk about this element of Star Wars we'd like to see come to life somehow in the show, and the next day a fully realized script outline or even a fully realized script will show up in his email inbox." And it's that kind of immediate response that I think Favreau is applying to what's going on with the development of this show. I don't think there's any downtime. I think Jon is writing most of it.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of dedication, I think, being shown by both of them with this show. So the original air date, for those of you watching or listening to this in the future, was November 15th, 2019, just a mere 4 days after the initial launch of the series and the whole platform, Disney Plus. So by the way, I really also like the fact that they have the little, last week on The Mandalorian or the last time on The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
It's just so, I don't know. Just something.
What?
I don't know. I love it.
Okay.
Right. No, yeah, it wasn't a criticism. No,
by that.
No,
there are certain throwbacks to classic television that I pick up from this show, especially the credit sequence at the end.
Oh, with the concept
of classic television.
But what is that? What does that come from? Because it's artwork for that episode.
Yes, it's concept.
It seems to be changing.
It's concept
specific
art.
to that episode. Where have we seen that before?
Bill, I was wondering that earlier. I thought it was the one that came to my mind. Forgive me, is the Planet of the Apes TV series.
Oh,
I thought that they ran.
They did that.
I maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but that was one that I thought about. But
it is a really cool touch. I mean, they used to. A lot of shows, 30 years ago or so, used to do like a lot of freeze frame stuff, like frames from the episode.
Jason in the chat is saying Wild Wild West did that. Oh. Wild Wild West. I remember at the end of Rocky 3, there's a freeze frame of Sly and Carl Weathers. Yeah, they're having a practice rematch. Yeah, a private rematch. And so there's a shot of them just about ready to connect on each other's
going
chins.
into a full punch. Yeah,
and it freeze frames, and that freeze frame turns into
a painting,
an oil painting.
Yeah,
and the credits roll over that.
God, now that you mentioned it, I remember
the painting was done by a fairly well-known artist too, and I forget his name, but he did a lot of sports artwork.
And a lot of people are saying there are elements of the Mandalorian soundtrack that takes them back to Bill Conti's Rocky soundtrack.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. Here's one right here. Dave in the chat says, I hear Rocky theme in the music. Is it just me? No, it's not just you, Dave.
Did you think of that when you were watching?
I didn't specifically, but many people have brought that up to me. Our friend Matt Rashid, who is an RFR VIP member on Patreon, he brought it up to me in our latest edition of RFR Q&A, which went live last night. That's a Patreon exclusive and available to all members of the Patreon community. So if you've been thinking about it, for just $1, you get some great extra RFR programming, RFR content right there. 2 hours of me and Matt talking about The Mandalorian. Oh. So check that out. And that did come up with me and Matt, was the similarities between the Rocky theme and the Mandalorian music.
Well, Ludwig Göransson, who is the composer, also wrote the scores for the 2 Creed movies.
I love Ludwig.
Oh, there's some very
he wrote
unusual...
the music for Creed.
He wrote the music for Creed 1 and 2.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And he's definitely using notes from the original Rocky soundtrack in those.
And I'm hearing shades, of course, of John Williams. There's no question. Particularly, I'm hearing a little bit. Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of Ray's theme dropped in, or something that sounds a little bit like the do 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 do.
Yeah, I pick up on that.
But there's some unusual instrumentation though, right? There's is there electric guitar? Are you hearing that?
Or it's a little more modern. Yeah,
chanting at one point. And there's a chanting thing during the
didgeridoos and there's all kind of bizarre, exotic instrumentation.
During that monster fight, that reek-like animal, there is very strange.
That animal is known as the mudhorn.
Okay. Yeah, it's not exactly a reek.
It's not exactly a reek.
It looks like a reek.
It looks very, very similar. It
smells like a reek.
It smells like a reek. But it's furry. And it lays furry, tasty eggs.
Apparently. By the way,
Cadbury eggs.
When the big Cadbury egg, I love that because to me, that was just very Lucas. Just weird, bizarre, very Lucas. And not in the completely emasculating way that they had Luke sucking from the teat of that giant whatever it was, sea cow in Last Jedi. It was just
siren.
That
it was
like
just
Watto.
bizarre. Yeah, just bizarre.
Like Watto with boobs.
Yeah, Watto with boobs. No, it just to me they're all like eating the yolk. I mean, that was so Lucas bizarre to me.
Dude, you're so right. I mean, that totally stuck with me, and I was thinking about that afterward. Like the Jawas, like we never even knew what they ate. What do they like to eat? What's a big tasty treat to them? Oh. A giant hairy egg. Like of course they eat eggs. Like that's just such a weird thing. Like that kid in your grade school class who always had like the weird egg salad stuff in their lunch, and they never. It's unusual. It's so unusual.
Were you that kid though, Bill? Or are you describing yourself? Did you have the weird egg salad?
I was a PB&J.
PB&J guy. Okay. Yeah. You know what? We've got let's throw the number back on the screen here one more time. 708-866-1737. Give us a call. We'll pop you on. We do have some calls here. We're talking Mandalorian, and let's see who we have here. Do I owe this guy some thanks? We gotta talk to him. Our pal Eric from Phoenix joining us. And Eric, I'm gonna say right away, man, I got to note the most pleasant surprise at the day job when I had a big package delivered to me and opened it up to reveal the Jabba's Palace Adventure playset.
Oh, we finally got it.
So thank you, sir.
The Holy Grail.
And all that profanity that you're
Oh, the profanity.
Yes.
The profanity. So, Eric, I appreciate it very much. Are you with us?
You bet.
There he is.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, you bet. No problem. That whole thing was an amazing experience. And just the fact that I was able to get out of Walmart with a toy that wasn't even on the shelf, that wouldn't ring up. I did pay for it, but that whole thing was awesome. So, yeah, I'm glad. I had a heck of a lot of fun finding that for you.
Wow, man, I appreciate it. We're gonna square up. We're gonna square up.
We'll not worry about it.
We'll square up offline here. But what do you think of the Mandalorian so far, and in particular, Chapter 2?
Yeah, I have to tell you guys, I love it. I mean, my gosh, how awesome is, first of all, just the fact that we have a live-action Star Wars TV show that we get to watch, number one. That's not knocking the Ewoks movie of the week, but this is fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. The thing that, to me, that this show is like, you take the best of the comics, you take the best of the expanded universe books, you throw in some video games. You guys mentioned Super Star Wars. My gosh, that game was so hard, especially that Sandcrawler level. That level sucked. And then you think about, it sucked. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And then, but you think about the video games, and then you think about as a kid, if you played with the Kenner action figures, and you mash all that together. And that's, to me, what this show is. It's just a heck of a lot of fun. If you were watching a Star Wars movie, just off to the right, 100 miles away, is where this is taking place, and it fits in perfect. The action's great. The acting's great. The characters are great. There's a lot of little nods here or there. The music, I heard some people complain about the music. I vehemently disagree. The music is fantastic, and the fact that it's not John Williams, and it's still good, it's a heck of a lot of fun to listen to it, and it's so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and just thrilled that we get a chance to watch this. It's great.
All right, well, let's. What Bill just said, kind of something similar to what you're saying, which is, it's fun. It's not as heavy. It's kind of giving us a little reprieve from the Bill. What was the term that you used? Not the mythology. What was it that you said?
The philosophical.
The philosophical stuff. But just when you think that they're going that way, now all of a sudden you've got this young Yoda, and forgive me, I know he's not Yoda. We have no reason to believe he's Yoda. Yoda's already passed away. Now, our pal Paul Bateman is suggesting that there could be some sort of reincarnation concept that they might introduce into the Force. I don't know. But all I know is this youngling, or a clone, Jimmy Max in the clone camp.
Well, I'll tell you why. There's been some additional information about that since we last spoke.
Really?
Dr. Pershing, who is found in the employ of Werner Herzog's The Client, Dr. Pershing comes out there, and I really tried to look very closely at what this dude was wearing. I noticed he had a patch on his shoulder. I thought he was wearing something similar to what we see the scientists in Rogue One wearing. The scientists who were slaughtered on the platform there by Krennic and the Death Troopers. I thought he was wearing something similar to that, and perhaps had that same patch on his shoulder. That's just what scientists wear in the Empire. But upon further inspections, some people on the internet have discovered some promo shots of this guy, and you can see part of that patch on his shoulder. And that patch on his shoulder is identical to the patch that the clones on Camino are wearing in Episode 2.
Oh.
Huh.
Okay.
So,
all right.
We might be seeing some connection.
Wow.
Between cloning technology, or quite simply, they want this infant of the species because they know it's powerful in the Force and they believe they can clone it.
Well, wow. I think it could be. I'm getting like a Dr. Mengele vibe. They want to be able to experiment on it and harness whatever power it has. I mean, I suppose the other route could be that. The Empire is a military force. It's a combination of military and mysticism. There was always what they tried to harness. I guess kind of like the Nazis and the occult. Would be the real life parallel there. They're trying to tap into the dark forces of
the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yes, and I suppose the other route would be if they're not going to experiment on the Yoda baby, that they would try to raise it in with their ideals, so that could become their next leader.
What do we call this thing? I hear people calling it the yodeling, which I like. I like the yodeling.
Well, I don't know. We're discussing. There's got to be more. I mean, they haven't identified the gender. We were talking about that earlier. They've identified it as they and it, and for some reason, so they seem to be keeping that. They're holding back on that, I think. And also, if the baby is 50 years old, does it have the ability to speak? Are we going to hear it speak at some point? Does it have a point of view? Are these things that we're waiting for?
Eric, do you have any thoughts about this? I mean, with a 50-year-old infant that's displaying a certain, a toddler. I guess toddler. 50-year-old toddler, but it is walking. Okay, good point. Walking toddler. Okay, 50-year-old toddler. I'm assuming that perhaps it can, as our children in our own world, our own universe, most will say that they understand a lot more than they can actually communicate outwardly. That's how you learn to talk. That's how you learn to communicate. What do you make of this yodeling, Eric from Phoenix? Is this a sign that they're going to go pretty deep with this series, or do you think they'll keep it, as you say, 1,000 miles away from what might actually be shown in a feature film?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but then tonight when the Force showed up, then that makes me think there's going to be a little bit deeper. It almost has to. Quite frankly, I don't want to say disappointed because I think it's cool. It honestly makes sense. I was kind of hoping we wouldn't get that. But with the Force getting thrown in there, I mean, there's just some things that are going to have to get explained.
Yep.
If not this season, it'll have to get explained maybe into next season.
But isn't that Filoni? I think it's so full. I think that's just so Filoni to he throws in that thing that shouldn't be there, like a Padawan for Anakin Skywalker, and then finds a great way to make it seem like, wow, yeah, that's how it should have been all along.
I think George Lucas might have had something to do with this too. I mean, you brought up the George Lucas connection. He's seen on set.
Yep, right.
He's known to be a huge influence on Dave Filoni, his mentor. He considers Filoni to be a son, according to Bryce Dallas Harper, or Howard, Ron Howard's daughter. Yeah, she said this at the Q&A from the other night. So I think George Lucas has more of an influence on these episodes and this miniseries than meets initial first blush. I think that picture tells a lot of stories. Yeah. And we had heard that he was actively involved in the writer's room, and the concepts of exploring Yoda's species were something that was presented by George himself. So this could very well be a very super honest extension of the mythology according to Lucas. I think we'll find out. We will find out.
Yeah, and I think my you know, and I want to go back when I said philosophy. I don't know if that's maybe the best word. It's not that I'm opposed to them getting philosophical. I mean, I like that, especially if they're going to be telling stories that have a strong moral to them. I mean, what is a moral? I mean, a moral is a, you know, a statement about the human condition, about right and wrong. I mean, you have to present some kind of philosophy. I guess the thing I get worried about is that they get overburdened with explanation. That's when I really start to say, okay, you know, you got to refocus. You know, keep it focused. You can tell stories that convey complex ideas and statements and communicate those in simple ways. That's what I most admire about storytelling, and not simplistic. They can be deep statements, but they don't have to be. When they science fiction sometimes especially gets really wrapped up in a lot of you know, having to explain this.
It can get very tedious,
very technical. Yeah. And I don't. And Star Wars was always very straightforward. It you know, it assumed you knew a lot. It didn't. You know, I mean, even the idea of the Force was just. It was a. I mean, George Lucas described it as a, you know, watered down universal statement about religion. It wasn't meant to be so specific,
right?
He would have to get into all the minutia.
Yes, minutia.
And sometimes it seems like fans want that, but it's like, you know, it's like the monolith in 2001. If you explain it, it loses the mystery. I mean, you got to keep some of that going, and you got to kind of keep. You got to keep your messages on target. You know, it's just you can get really wrapped up in a lot of this explanation of stuff.
And sometimes an adventure story is just an adventure, you know.
Right.
You know, it's
like
the
we
thrill of the ride.
Right, and we want to cheer and be manipulated in that way. You know, that's fun. That's what we like.
That's what we love.
Well, Eric, any passing or final thoughts here on what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, I got 4 quick things.
Whoa.
And one of them is a question for you guys. So the first thing, did you guys notice? It's super quick. Did you notice Jon Favreau in the first episode? His voice?
No.
We thought we heard someone saying "Hutuda Matata," or what is that word from the
Hakuna Matata?
Hakuna Matata. Yeah. We thought we heard someone saying that in the background during the shootout with the Nicktoons and the IG in episode 1, but that's debatable whether Hakuna Matata was said.
No, it's when they're in when Werner Herzog is giving him his mission, and the doctor walks in, and there's one stormtrooper that speaks, and I'm pretty certain that's Jon Favreau.
That was. I think that was. Eric, I got to disagree. That was Matt Wood.
Yeah, that's who I heard.
Oh.
Yeah. You think so? Okay.
I think it was Matt Wood.
I thought it was the Warrior Ways voice of Jon Favreau, so I'm off on that. Sorry
I think it's going to show up. I don't think it's been in yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up somewhere.
It was good. They were good stormtrooper voices, though, for sure.
Yeah, it was good.
That 5,
the second thing I've got is a question for you guys. So they're, you know, when he's been tracking guys, or the Trandoshan showed up tonight, they have that tracker.
Yeah.
So how are they able to track the bounties? Does everybody have like a something in their body that they're able to track? That's one thing. I don't know why.
Yeah,
well, that's
codes.
Tonight, but I'm like, how? Yeah.
It's interesting. You know, under oppressive dictatorship like the Empire, perhaps regular citizens were. They placed microchips under their skin or something crazy like that. You never know. I think that's yet to be defined. The addition of these other bounty hunters out searching for this Yoda baby was pretty much defined by Nick Nolte in the first episode when he said that these bounty hunters kept coming to his valley and causing all kind of mayhem and violence and destruction. And that's why he was relieved to see the Mandalorian there, because he had heard stories about the Mandalorian that led him to believe the Mandalorian was capable enough to achieve the the goal of the bounty hunt and get that prize and put an end to it all. So that's why the additional bounty hunters are still showing up, like those Bosks, those Trandoshans. But the question remains with these trackers, right? Why are there so many of them out there that are able to pinpoint where an individual is?
Well, the question I had was not so much was this a tracking fob for the yodeling, but was it a tracking fob that was put out for the Mandalorian? In other words, has he been gone too long? We don't really know in terms of the time, and are they hedging their bets? So they hire this guy to find the yodeling. Perhaps Werner Herzog's character knows that anyone that finds this thing is going to be, perhaps tempted to keep it for themselves or what have you, which he kind of did. They might, IG-11 might have sent some sort of message after he was dispatched, back to Greef Karga. I don't know. So I keep thinking that maybe it was actually the Mandalorian that was being hunted, or there might be a bounty out for him now that those Trandoshans were trying to capture. That was just my thought.
That could be a bounty on the bounty hunter.
Yeah. The hunter becomes the hunted. I think that's where this is going to go.
Who among us, and I'm thinking it would be Billy Mack if it's anyone, who among us here is familiar with the story Lone Wolf and Cub? Adam O'Brien on Facebook was bringing that up, and I've seen that thrown out there a lot. Does anyone have any sort of feet on the ground as far as that story goes, Bill?
No.
Yeah.
What about Leon the Professional?
I think he comes from Japanese films. I meant to do a little research on Lone Wolf and Cub, but I didn't. But a lot of people are saying, hey, there are some connections to what we're seeing in The Mandalorian, specifically between The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, that have echoes of Lone Wolf and Cub.
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but I certainly am familiar with Leon the Professional, where you have a hitman. That was one of Natalie Portman's first films. Where you have a hitman that ends up sort of taking this young girl under his wing.
Three Godfathers. Did you ever see that?
No.
That's a Western, and they have the three outlaws have a baby that they have to protect.
Three outlaws and a baby. That's one of my favorites.
Three. You know what? I think it might.
Wasn't Ted Danson in that?
Might be connected to that movie somehow. There might be intellectual property. It might be a remake of Three Godfathers. Now that I think about it, but yeah, it's John Wayne and I think
John Wayne, Steve Guttenberg,
Harry Carey Jr. I think
Harry Carey Jr.
Yeah,
Harry Carey Jr.
Yeah.
You mean
not
Connick Jr.
Not
Harry Carey.
No,
Jr.
there was an actor named Harry Carey, and he was in westerns and stuff. And they find a woman who, oh God, it's been so long since I've seen this.
All right, well, let's not get too in the weeds about the three.
See what happens, Eric. See what happens, Eric. Look, you got us down this rabbit trail.
Sorry.
All right.
There's got to be.
I'll let you guys go.
All right, 2 down, 2 to go.
Mack, great to see you on the show tonight. No, I can't remember the fourth thing, so I'll leave you with the third. Billy Mack, great to see you on the show, and I love the fact you're rocking Colt 45 back there. So keep up the great work, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. We love you out there in Phoenix. All right, let's go to who do we got? We've got it looks like Jacob from Indiana. Jacob, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, great. So real quick, I've got one about the last episode, the first one. Mm-hmm. I noticed tonight when I was watching it again that Karga mentions one of the pucks that he drops is for a wanted smuggler. What do you guys? You think that might be a certain smuggler?
Han Solo.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Does he say former smuggler? Is that what he says, or is Just a wanted smuggler.
Wanted smuggler.
A wanted smuggler. I like that. I like that it could be Han Solo.
It could be. Yeah.
Could be Lando Calrissian too.
Smuggler gets thrown around, and often a lot of times is a very common profession in the Star Wars galaxy. But there could be something very specific about that. I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah. But also, one quick thing, I thought it was funny seeing the little guy swallow a frog whole. That was neat.
That was weird.
All right, now that's really interesting. Cool. Now, see, at the very beginning, when they're walking through that rocky valley and the Mandalorian, it's the very first thing we see in this episode. You see these little lizards running along with the Mandalorian and the capsule holding the baby Yoda. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking to myself, this baby definitely has a connection to nature and animals. And there's a force connection that causes these little reptiles to connect. And then we see it later on a much bigger scale when the infant Yoda can make the mudhorn reek float in the air. He blocked his attack. So there's definitely a connection that this little guy has to at least reptiles of all sort of different shapes and sizes.
Well, remember it was Dave Filoni that gave us Ezra that was showing great powers when it came to animals. Right.
And, this is something I wanted to see actually from the Porgs in The Last Jedi. I thought that they would be connected to Luke and they would be able to surround him and act on his will via connection through the Force. But they just turned out to be a bunch of dumb birds. But, because that's all they did. I thought because they were populating that island so much and that island seemed to have a strong connection to the Force, that the Porgs would be connected to the Force and to Luke in that sort of way. And that was my early speculation for The Last Jedi. Now, looking at this little Yoda and seeing the lizards skip along happily with them as they're walking through that area at the beginning of the show, I was like, wow, he's got that connection to the lizards that I wanted to see Luke have with the Porgs, but it just didn't happen. So
I don't know why I was in such denial about this yodeling having force powers. I didn't want to go there because I thought, all right, we can't make this assumption, right? I mean, just because we've met Yoda and Yaddle who are force sensitive doesn't mean that everyone in the species is going to be that way. I mean, that's a dangerous way of thinking, when you put everybody into boxes like that. Mm-hmm. But when he kind of toddled over as the Mandalorian was working on his wounds and trying to, fix himself up, and he was putting his, his little paws out or whatever you want to call them.
Claws.
Little claws, right, out. I thought, okay, this is sort of cute, but, and then, with the big hairy reek or whatever you want to call it, it was Mudhorn. Yes, it was very obvious that we're dealing with a force sensitive, because I didn't think they were going to go there. I'm not upset that they are. I think it's quite cool, actually. It just shows just how ballsy they're going to be with this show.
Yeah. Do you think that it kind of seemed like the Mandalorian, after that happened, that he saw that the little guy as possibly being a potential mortal enemy because of using the Force and the history that Mandalorians have with Jedi and stuff?
Okay, I see why you might go that way. That beat didn't hit me the same way. I wasn't carrying that in. I was looking at it like he was thinking that this was something I need to protect. He feels, I think, responsible for this little guy. I don't know. Bill, Jim, did you get a sense that he, is in any way carrying some of this maybe animosity or grudge that the Mandalorians could have with Jedi or Force-sensitive beings?
No, I think we're in an era of Star Wars right now where, knowledge of the Jedi and the Force and things like that have been severely suppressed. Because keep in mind, Han Solo said, that's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo nonsense. He didn't believe in it. And I think that this is a new era of Mandalorian, I should say, that doesn't really have any sort of connection to the Jedi and the involvement in the Clone Wars and all of that. This is more specific about the Mandalorian culture from their point of view. Like I said at the beginning of the show, there are just so many different approaches to being a Mandalorian that we've been presented to over the years, that I look at him as coming from a sect of Mandalorian who is extremely guided by faith and religion. And connection to that.
Yeah, while that's top of mind, because Jim, you'd mentioned when he says that line about the weapon as part of his religion, I took that as sarcasm.
You did? I
did. I took that as sarcasm. You took that quite literally. Okay.
No, because it gets further validated by Queel the Ugnaught when the Jawas are bartering and they ask for the Beskar armor. And Queel says he can't give up. He's a Mandalorian. He can't give up. It would be like, exchanging his heart for the ship parts. So, no, I think that's to be taken on face value, that he's definitely he has a connection to his weaponry.
I don't know how I don't know how sarcastic it is, but it might be a little bit tongue in cheek. Like kind of in the way that Irishmen such as myself and my brother talk about how we like to drink,
Yeah, that's the vibe I got. Hey, Jacob from Indiana, thanks very much for calling. Appreciate it. We got someone from Ohio here. This is Zach from OHIO. Hopefully Zach is going to be with us for Skywalker Rises in Ohio. We'll find out. Hey, Zach, what's going on?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you,
Zach?
I am fantastic. Just got done watching The Mandalorian, and I am so stoked that my childhood Star Wars is back.
Yes. I couldn't agree more.
Are you an OT Star Wars fan, or is that
so
when
I'm
you were
in
a kid?
my mid-30s.
Oh,
I'm in my mid-30s, so I grew up with the VHS special editions, but I really loved it all.
Well, let me. So if you're in your 30s, did you go see the special editions in the theater? You would have been like in your teens. Oh, you did.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I would have been like, I was middle school when the prequels started coming out.
Nice.
But elementary would have been like the special editions, and that was my first introduction to Star Wars in the theater. But I grew up watching the VHSs.
Wow. So how does this work for you? You're obviously, I would say, your original trilogy generation, because that's where you come from. Despite your age, you jumped on board during the special edition era, which was prior to the prequel era, obviously, and everything that followed it. So your foundation in the wars is specifically original trilogy.
Yes, sir. And Boba Fett was my favorite from the get-go.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So this show, because of Boba Fett being a particular favorite of yours, is hitting you in all the right spots, right? It's scratching all the itches as a Star Wars fan for you?
Absolutely. Mandos are, and always have been, my niche favorite part of Star Wars. So I was definitely into all the Republican Mando books and, the Clone Wars ARC Troopers, all of it. Most of my Black series I have are Mandos or Boba.
All right, well,
yeah, definitely it's really, really ringing for me.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I'm curious, and I have a sense of what the answer might be, but let's say that this was not a Mandalorian character. Let's say you had all of the same plot points and major beats in these first two episodes, but he might have been just kind of a random smuggler, right? Maybe he was, I don't know. Maybe he was from, where's Han from again? Just
Corellia.
Corellia. Maybe he's a Corellian smuggler. Is the show hitting you because you get to see that T-shaped visor and that Mandalorian armor, or is it hitting you in other areas as well? Because I know the Mando Maniacs. By the way, Jimmy, multiple folks have said that should be your opening for this show.
Oh, hey, Mando Maniacs.
Mando Maniacs.
Oh, I like that one. Someone said Fandalorians. I was really with that.
That's not too bad. But
it's not bad, but I like Mando Maniac sounds more like something I would say.
By the way, did you notice Queel called him Mando?
Tonight? Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Just the abbreviated.
Yeah, I called him Mando when he was coming back after having secured the egg.
Well, also at the very beginning in the first episode, when he goes in to get that blue alien out of the bar in Huttese.
You mean the worst Star Wars character ever?
No, I don't think so. I'm not throwing down that way. You have your opinion. I have mine. I kind of liked him. Do I think he's right out of Next Generation? Yes, I do. But no, I thought he was fine. And also, a lot of people did point out, Jason, there are other aliens in Star Wars who have spoken English, no problem.
Like who?
Many, many others.
Who?
Well, I mean, in animation, tons of them.
Oh, well, I said, okay, but I said animation, yes.
Outside of animation, you have Ayla Secura. You have...
I don't think she talks.
No, I'm thinking about the other one. The one that looks like Ahsoka but isn't.
Shakti.
Shakti.
Yoda.
She talks English in the outtakes.
Yoda.
Outtakes.
Yoda. But
Yoda doesn't speak normal.
He speaks. He flip flops his sentences, but he does.
Yeah,
he does. Ki-Adi-Mundi. There's one. Conehead.
He kind of has an accent, though. He has a little bit of an accent. He doesn't sound like, just a dude from the Midwest.
Masamita? Order! We shall have order!
He's like, order! So he's he's got the British thing going. There's just, come on. I can't believe that you're defending this. It's terrible. It's awful.
Still speaking English.
It's so bad. Well, I'm not even talking about English.
I liked everything about him. He's my favorite.
You know what? Now. You're just doing this to spite me. Character. That's all you care about is just spiting me right now.
The blue alien.
You can love him. It's okay.
He has very attractive glands.
He reminded me of the Orville, though. Yeah.
All right, Zach. I was in the midst of asking you a question, and you didn't get the answer. What beyond the Mando armor is turning you on about this show?
The blue skin alien.
It's. Yeah. The musk is really a benefit for me. But no, it's just flat out. It is great TV. It is fantastic storytelling, and I think for all of us, that is the root of why we love Star Wars so much. It's our favorite delivery method of the age-old storyline, but with cool space wizards with laser swords. And Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are just flat out making a gorgeous, fantastic with the music, everything. It just looks spectacular.
Yeah. There's something about the vibe of the whole production that just seems to work.
It's so spaghetti Italian Western.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic space Western. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and I don't care if he's a Mandalorian under the mask or not. One of the things that I loved from the old EU was the Mando with the Viking vibe, where you just, as long as you came and absorbed yourself in that culture and you upheld like the honor and restraint and like the Mando code, you could be a Mando. And I think that's where they are also going with that coven. And the foundlings is, Dave Filoni and Favreau loved to rip from the old EU, which we're grateful for. And they had a lot of that adopting, war orphans, and you see the Mando clearly sticking to a code, and I think it's more specific than just the Bounty Hunters Guild. It's more the Mando code.
Yeah, right. And I do agree with you that it definitely has a lot of Western.
Oh, for sure. John Ford, all that.
Big time.
Well, again, that's what Filoni does, is he doesn't just try to ape George Lucas. He looks at what motivated and inspired George Lucas and brings that into Star Wars. Hey, Zach, thank you very much. Where in Ohio are you from, by the way?
I'm from Columbus. I didn't get to. I want to tell you. Well, the one thing about what I thought about the Mando, though, the armor. That was what I called for.
Go for it.
I think if you look, I haven't been able to look close, but I'm thinking maybe that is Boba's armor, because once it scrapes off some of the blaster bolts in the fight, it almost looks like it could be that green underneath. So
wouldn't that be interesting? So the more beat up he gets, it's like a scratch-off, lottery scratch-off. By the end of the season, we're going to see that it's Boba's armor.
Yeah, like Sabine repainted her armor, and they pulled his. That Boba's armor made it out of the Sarlacc, even if Boba didn't. No. So maybe that's the recovered armor, and he was part of the clan, and he just layered over his own paint. So I don't know.
There was a one of those interludes in the Aftermath novels that featured someone purchasing this Mandalorian armor, and it was kind of set up like as if it was found out in the desert somewhere. And we know, of course, Boba Fett has climbed out of that Sarlacc pit a million times in the expanded universe, most notably in
I've got the
Dark
artwork.
Horses, but right now we have to assume Boba Fett is dead. We have to assume that
Correct. And I'm not even saying he's alive.
But I mean, George Lucas was pretty flexible about bringing back Boba Fett. That was something that definitely he heard fans yelling and screaming about. No, he can't possibly be dead. I heard George Lucas himself.
They won't let him die.
Yeah. They won't let him die.
They won't let him die.
Yeah. And Lucas is laughing. He's like, I just created this thing to stand up in the background and stuff. But who knew? Who knew? Listen, everyone knew that was the coolest armor we ever saw in any science fiction, anything.
Absolutely.
When Boba Fett debuted in Empire Strikes Back, I remember hanging out in our neighborhood, Billy Mack, with hanging out with guys up and down the street, and they would only refer to Boba Fett as the bounty hunter because he didn't really he was not identified in the film. And I started walking around with my Boba Fett iron-on T-shirt.
Yeah,
and that clarified to everyone. I was like,
did you get that at the mall? At the store in the mall where you pick out the iron-on and they make the shirt?
Yeah.
We had one right down the street.
Right down the street, there was a strip mall, a giant strip mall. It's still there, and there was a T-shirt shop in there.
Personally for you.
Was that what it was called?
Personally for you, yeah.
That was the name of the shop?
Yeah.
Personally for you?
And you'd get your name. You can get your name. Like, remember back then, because kids would get their name on the back of the shirts. Like, you never see that anymore.
No, you don't.
You don't want you don't want the creeps knowing your kids' names.
Yeah, the predators.
Right. Like, you'd get like that rainbow lettering or whatever on the back.
Hey, Jason, come here. He knows my name.
My Boba Fett iron-on.
I got a Lando iron-on from there.
You got a Lando?
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
No, we had a bunch of them though. You had a Stormtrooper one, and then there was the Boba Fett one, and
I remember
the
Boba
Lando.
Fett.
I had the Lando.
I remember the Boba Fett. I was instantly attracted to the look and the vibe and the cool factor of that character the very first time I saw him. So when I went to, it was called Personally for You.
Personally for You.
That sounds like such a. I'm going to Personally for You to get myself an Boba Fett iron-on.
It's like Things Remembered. Remember Things Remembered? That doesn't sound cool. Everything in the 80s was cool.
This was cool.
This was
not this.
So I could still smell the shop.
Oh yeah,
I could smell it.
Oh yeah,
it had a very distinct odor, and so I walked out of there with my Boba Fett shirt on. He's just badass. Jeremy Bullock standing there in that armor, and and all my friends would say, Boba Fett. They would call him like it's Boba Fett,
Boba Fett,
Boba Fett. No, Baba. Yeah, that was a good one, but that was they would all say, Vader just calls him bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, and hey, speaking of Vader, by the way, Zach, thank you so much for calling.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Zach.
it. Hopefully he can join us for Skywalker Rises in Ohio. It's only a couple hours drive from Columbus up to Cleveland. I wanted to ask you, speaking of Darth Vader and bounty hunters, we finally got to see disintegrations. That's one heck of a weapon he's got there. No disintegrations. And when I was a kid, the way I interpreted that line, by the way, in Empire, it was almost like I thought he was saying like no disintegrations meant like no deviation from what I'm asking you to do. I didn't think as a kid that he meant literally do not disintegrate these people. But there it is, man. That is a badass weapon he's got.
Yeah. But it did, it blew that Trandoshan into smithereens, but somehow the tracker was the only thing that remained.
Maybe it works more on organic matter than it does.
Bill, rewind the scene. What?
Yeah.
Why
you replay it? Well, just because it was a really cool scene. I thought I replayed it.
I thought there was a scene.
But let me ask you guys something too about the. Yeah. Well, this is my next comment about the Jawas. So he disintegrated a couple of Jawas, and you see, basically the robe is left over.
That's true. The robe flies up in the air and comes back down.
Now, in the original, in A New Hope, are you taking his clothes off?
I'm just wondering what's going on underneath here. Anyway,
there's nothing going on underneath. It's just, what do you think is going on underneath?
Underneath the Jawa cloak.
No, but in the original, in A New Hope, because this got me thinking about that scene where they where Ben and 3PO and all of them come across the sand crawler, and they're burning the bodies. And when I was a kid, I always thought it was just the robes. I thought like the Jawas had disappeared. I just thought that's what happened when they die. I mean, they're just like black. What are they anyway? I just thought, you shoot them and they melt or something. Like if you see that scene, doesn't it just look like they're just burning the robes?
Because they look very flattened.
Yeah, and although I've seen some set some photographs from the set, and they did have there were dummy bodies in there. So I mean, I guess it was intended to be their actual bodies, but in this show when they show them getting zapped by the Mandalorian, I thought maybe they were just kind of, disappearing. But on the other hand, Mandalorian disintegration, so that's what he does anyway. So
yeah, well, and I loved seeing the interior of the Sandcrawler. I thought they really got the Jawas right. When you see sometimes them trying to recreate something from 40 some years ago, it just maybe feels off a little bit, but I thought it just felt so right, so perfect.
Red eyes, though.
Well,
right?
the red eyes, because that's the off-world Jawa. So apparently when they go off Tatooine, the eyes go red. But haven't we found out that the redness of the eyes, they're goggles that they're actually wearing?
Nobody said that. That's never been.
Well, there were okay, all right. Well,
goggles.
there was a Topps trading card for the what was that Topps set of trading cards that came out that really was at the same time that the Bendums were coming out in like 93. We're talking about before
the Star Wars Galaxy.
Yes.
Trading cards, but those were all just artist depictions.
Right. But there was
certain things.
An unhooded Jawa. And
was there?
There was, and he had little whatchamacallits, like little like binoculars, but they were
no. That's an imposter. That's an imposter. That's not a real Jawa. You speak Jawa like a Wookiee. That was a great line. And then he opens the flamethrower up on them. Come on.
Oh.
I mean, just they're just little space rodents, those Jawas. Right.
I love when he yanks the one out of the window of the Sandcrawler and he just tumbles down to the ground. This show was so refreshing in so many ways. It just was fun. Good Lord. It was just
Think about this for a second.
Yeah.
Not only do we get to actually go inside a live action Jawa sandcrawler for the very first time, but we get to go up into the cockpit.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And see, and so he's in there.
We've been inside. We just haven't been in the.
Oh, I guess you're sorry. Of course, we've been inside. Yeah. We've been in the hold there, but that's not glamorous like the cockpit.
Right.
So we're up in there with a human who has to be on his hand, on his knees there, scrunched out. They hit a little bump and he bashes his head on the ceiling. They all start laughing at him. The Jawas just have this irreverent take on life. It's they just want the scrap and they want eggs.
Dude, I love the fact that he waged this. He was like a sniper. He was like taking these Jawas out. Which, by the way, was the whole idea that he wanted to overtake the sandcrawler and use the sandcrawler as a vehicle for his own devices? Is that what he was?
No, he wanted his stuff back. He wanted all of the gear they.
And what is he?
But wait a minute, though. Wait a minute. Wait. What threw me off was that he came upon the sandcrawler before he came upon his ship that had already been stripped.
Well, the first time in the act.
Yeah, he just caught him red-handed.
Yeah, I mean they were both. I mean, it was happening when he got there.
Oh, they were stripping the
Razor
were in the
Crest.
Process
of doing
it.
They
looked like they were several hours into it.
Okay, I've only seen it once, so I didn't see the Razor Crest in that sequence.
Oh, yeah, it was right there.
It was right there. Okay, gotcha.
Pulling stuff.
All right, and he wanted to ship parts back.
And he calls it. He doesn't call it sandcrawler. He calls it a traveling fortress
roving fortress or something, but that's just what he calls it. I mean, he's just trying to indicate to us as viewers that the Jawas are hard to get to once they're in that thing and it's moving, and that's how they get away with a lot of the crazy crap.
I dug that. I like that he would cook because he doesn't know what it is. It is a traveling fortress. I think that's cool.
He clearly was away longer than anticipated. And Nick Nolte Queel says this to him. He said, "I thought you were dead." Mm-hmm. So, and clearly the Jawas had been there for quite a while. They were going to town. They took a lot off of that ship. It was a skeleton by the time he got back to it. So he had been gone for a while.
By the way, there were oh, sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
No, that's really all I got to say about it.
There were two moments in 30 minutes, and I got to say, as critical as I was in the last episode about the short running time, this felt like an hour to me, and I don't mean it in a bad way. Like, I felt there was so much jam packed in. As you said, I think that if we'd be dealing with 60-minute episodes, that we might get some filler in there, and there was just no downtime in this episode. But there were two moments where the Mandalorian lost consciousness. The first was when he was given that jolt on top of the sandcrawler and he fell down, and then the second time was during his battle with the hairy horn monster. And are we supposed to think that the yodeling had something to do with his coming to? Because it kind of fades, like he's losing consciousness, then he comes out, and then usually like the next shot is the yodeling. So I don't know if the yodeling is kind of bringing him back from the brink. I don't mean death.
Yeah, it's a good thought. It's a good thought. I mean, he's clearly displayed a sense of sympathy and protection for the Mandalorian. There's a bond there between the two of them. There was the E.T. moment where he's reaching out, trying to heal him.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Very E.T.
Uh-huh.
Huh.
And, I have to admit, that was the one scene that I was having trouble getting my feet on the ground watching, was the infant Yoda interacting with the Mandalorian as he was trying to cauterize his wound. I was just like, wow, man, this is a new level of Star Wars weirdness here. And, because Yoda is such a venerable character, and to see essentially Yoda being portrayed, and I'm not saying it is Yoda,
right?
But essentially seeing Yoda as an infant,
like him, makes it less special.
No, I'm not even saying that. It's just my adaptability to these new elements being introduced to us all these years later, after thinking that I knew everything about this character I could possibly want to know.
Yeah, but how does it change? I'm not understanding. How does
it doesn't change.
What you know.
It doesn't. All I just said was that it just took me a second to get my feet on the ground for all of that,
all right.
and to take it all in. And that's all I'm saying. I just felt uncomfortable for some reason looking at that at first. Why? I don't know. I couldn't even figure it out myself, and I didn't feel that on subsequent viewings. I have seen this episode about 3 or 4 times now.
Guys, we've got a caller in from Hawaii. It looks like this is. I'm thinking maybe Lori. Looks like maybe Lori, but you never can't tell. But it looks like it's Wailuku, Hawaii. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Aloha, guys. No, the voice is a little bit lower for Lori.
Oh, sorry.
It's Maui Mark.
Lori Mark.
Maui Mark.
Oh, Maui Mark. Okay, all right. It didn't know Maui, so.
Yeah, long time no talk.
Well, it's great to hear from you, and aloha. So what's on your mind tonight? We're talking Mandalorian Chapter 2, The Child.
Yeah, I'm going to try and cut down this list of stuff for you. First of all, this is the first Star Wars-related line that my son, who's now almost 28, has enjoyed since Episode 3.
Wow. All right.
All the others, he's kind of like, oh, it's okay. This one, as soon as we told him we were on Disney Plus, and I told him how good the storyline was, he's hooked.
He's in. 28-year-old son is...
Once he gets off work, he's headed to the TV.
That's good, right?
Yeah, well, no, that's great. I'm glad he's enthusiastic. And that's the way I kind of felt, too, is when he saw the trailer for Episode 9, I'm like, okay, this is basically the end of 42 years of Star Wars. And seeing The Mandalorian, I feel like it's not left.
Yeah, it's sort of a new beginning.
It's really just continuing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, and I really hope that Disney takes a look at this, sees it for what it is, and asks Dave to start helming and righting the ship, because it's so off course right now.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, his star is rising over there with the debut of this show. And he and Favreau, it appears, has a great chemistry together. And I don't think that could be underestimated. Yeah. And Jon Favreau has a lot of weight and clout that he uses over at Disney based on the fact that he's been so successful with the Marvel and the Lion King and the Jungle Book. I mean, Favreau is Marvel. He is Marvel. And he is Disney. Yeah. And this is just another root of his tree that's firmly planting itself in the Magic Kingdom. And I think his attention to detail with Star Wars, his deft touch and feel of how the universe operates, and his fearlessness as far as just going for it and not worrying about
Right. He's
things.
not afraid to tell us.
It just seems like there's so much baggage surrounding the Star Wars saga films these days that it's just become so overwhelming to me. I'm considering the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker next month is something that I am going into feeling very bittersweet about. Sometimes with more of an emphasis on bitter than sweet. And I shouldn't be feeling that way.
And I agree with that. And I've stayed away from every possible spoiler that I've been able to. And you guys are about the only thing that I'll listen to in terms of any information. And I see something come up on YouTube, I'm like, later.
Wow, we appreciate that.
We do.
Very much. And, of course, we can crash at your place when we go to Hawaii.
Anybody that's a Star Wars... You're always welcome to come by, and I'll make you some Haukia pies that'll rock your world.
Ooh.
Deal.
Ooh.
But anytime I find a Star Wars fan or somebody wearing Star Wars clothing, I always ask them, hey, have you ever heard of Rebel Force Radio? And I constantly promote you guys. And
thank you.
Listen, great.
That's awesome.
A few of them are like, oh, yeah, I got to check it out.
Obviously doing what we're doing, word of mouth is the best kind of advertising we could ever possibly ask for. And the fact that you feel inspired enough to do something like that really makes you a superstar in our book. So thank you so much for the support.
Oh, yeah. The scientist that was in the first episode.
Yes.
Reminded me an awful lot of the scientist in Rebels, not Rebels, Clone Wars, where he was developing the poison gas.
Dr. Vindy.
Michael York?
That was Michael York. Yeah. Oh, good one, Bill. Michael York. Yeah. So a lot of people have listened to the show for a long time, and they've heard me talk about how there's never bespeckled characters in Star Wars. You never see someone wearing, straight up glasses.
Except Wilford Brimley, right? Wasn't that?
Well, yeah. He refused LASIK and
That's the right thing.
He's like, no, man, no. Just get me a bowl of oatmeal. But you never really have seen anyone wearing glasses in the Star Wars universe. We've seen goggles aplenty. Looking at you, Hondo Onaka, but glasses, regular glasses, we finally see them with Dr. Pershing, and I don't want to see him, quite honestly. It doesn't to me feel right for the Star Wars aesthetic, the vibe. You'd figure a galaxy far, far away has got LASIK surgery down pretty, that's a thing. So, but whatever. I'm wondering what why they would suddenly decide to introduce this guy as the one glasses wearing character that we meet in the Star Wars universe in live action, except for Wilford Brimley. But maybe just they don't even care about it. It just fits his character. He's a scientist. He's a doctor. A lot of doctors wear glasses, I guess. I don't know. Even in the galaxy far, far away.
Two last things I'll leave you with. The Jawa, when they got that egg and they cracked it open, I swear all I could think of was these guys are hooked on Cadbury eggs.
Yes, right. I was confused because I thought it was like a religious artifact for them. I thought they revered those eggs. He held it up, and they were all like, "Oh, I thought they were going to have some sort of faith-based moment, but instead it's just a pig out situation. They love the eggs. It's a treat.
Right.
That's a treat for them. And it's funny to watch
the
it.
The yolk was on them.
Hello.
I thought when they said the egg, I thought they were referring to that thing that the yodeling was inside, that they had heard of this egg.
That crossed my mind too.
But and then I thought maybe it was a crate dragon, because in the past there's been this pearl that the crate dragon would create that the Jawas revered. And I thought maybe the egg or the crate dragon egg or something, but it turned out to be this mudhorn delicacy that these guys get off on. And I think the Mandalorian himself was under the assumption that he was out to get something that amplifies their faith. It's a religious artifact. It's something that's revered in their culture. And then when he saw them cut into that thing and all go nuts, then he gave that reaction.
There's
like
a reaction.
Yeah,
he's
just like,
there was so much humor in that whole sequence. I mean, I was just laughing my ass off.
The Jawas themselves promote funny moments.
Yeah.
And it was so great to see that being played on here in this show. And they did a great job replicating that classic 1977 Jawa sound, that dialect.
Oh, it was perfect.
It was perfect.
All the whispering they do.
Yeah, the laughing.
Well, and how about when they shoot the Mandalorian and it has he turns all blue glowy and stuff, just like when they shot R2.
Oh yeah, with the bolts and all that. I was actually thinking about
this had played with the Williams music though. I was thinking about that. Like just some notes of the Jawa themes from A New Hope. How it would have changed? Would have changed?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah,
it seemed like it could have come in at any moment. It was
I was actually waiting for the Force theme when the yodeling was, pushing back on that Harry Horn beast or whatever it was. And as far as the Jawas were concerned, I was thinking of our old buddy Otis Frampton, who has the Jawa Adventures pitch for the comic book series. I thought that these seemed like very Otis Frampton type Jawas. They all had their own little personalities. I thought what was so funny about them is that, they were all undone by the fact that the Mandalorian had disintegrated a few of their own, but they were ready to sit down and do business with the guy. Like their pride only goes so far. When it gets in the way of money and trading and all of that, they're all in.
Well, they're a collective, I mean,
right.
It's just like some of the worker bees got. It's probably no big deal to them.
Right.
And I loved on my second viewing, knowing what the egg actually was, just a self-indulgent treat for the Jawas. It's funny to watch the episode a second time because when they're conducting the negotiations between Kuiil, the Mandalorian, and the Jawas, the Jawas get to they want the egg. They huddle together and they said the egg. And you see Kuiil, he's just like, oh Jesus, not the egg.
Oh, so he knows.
Yeah,
he knows that
exactly.
That's what this is.
He sure does. He sure does.
Oh man. Hey,
Suka.
Mark, thanks so much, and best to you and your son.
Last note.
Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last note. Could I leave you on?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the whole story arc, and I'm wondering if this is the story arc of a Mandalorian going from merc to a man of honor.
Okay.
I think
because
so.
He's collecting all these bounties and everything, and then within one storyline, you can see the beginning of the transformation where he's actually caring for young Yoda, I guess.
Yeah.
You can see more emotion, more passion in his convictions rather than, it's just another bounty.
Yeah, and we just don't know why exactly yet, what his thought processes are.
Oh, they'll flesh that out.
They've got to. I mean, he's the main character. I mean, there's got to be some way to generate sympathy for him. And, I mean, what more obvious way to do that than with a cute little baby? I mean,
right.
Hey, Mark.
Thanks, guys, so much. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much.
Just let me know when you guys are coming down, and I'll get some stuff ready for you.
That'd be awesome. I keep waiting for Star Wars Celebration Honolulu. That would be amazing. Let's. I think we have time for one more call here. I believe this is Nathan. Hello, Nathan. You've been waiting a long time. We appreciate it. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello. Hello, Nathan.
Nathan.
You're on the air. Did we lose Nathan?
Going once.
From LaGrange, Illinois. That sounds familiar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what it says. But it looks like he might have left. Let's try Maryland. We've got Kevin. Kevin from Maryland. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Hey, it's Evan.
Oh, Evan. Okay. We were close.
Yeah, it's me. Yes. Yeah, you were close. Just one vowel. Who cares? Whatever. Hey.
How are you tonight?
Listen, I just want to say I'm doing great. It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Fantastic.
So super stoked I got on with you guys.
So are we.
It's my third time talking to you guys. Cool. I'm glad I got the OT trilogy. I got, Jason, Jimmy, and Billy right here, OT trilogy. And I am actually having, I please forgive me. I've been having some bourbon while I've been on hold. So have Jason, that's your fault. But hey, listen, I just wanted to say a few things. Yes, cheers, sir.
Yes, sir.
A few things.
Bottoms up.
This has been, second episode. This has been fantastic. It feels like, again, original trilogy to me. One of the things that I really took away from this one was the fact that, we really got to see some things that were a little scary. To me, I mean, here's some things that I took away from it. Number one, the Sandcrawler has the best four-wheel drive ever.
It sure does.
8-wheel drive.
So good. But I love the shot inside the cockpit. It reminded me of Hoth that scene where they're in the AT-AT and they're going through, and it had that kind of vibe, that look. Number two, the other thing that I thought was great was there was this weird thing, looking back to George Lucas's take on the serials and stuff, and I swear to God, when I was watching The Mandalorian climb up that sandcrawler after he shot his grappling hook, it reminded me of old school Adam West and Burt Ward Batman climbing up a damn apartment complex, and it was so great. It was so nostalgic, and it felt so good. Like this whole thing, like you guys were saying earlier, when I saw it was going to be a shorter episode, immediately I was like, oh man, can I just get an hour, please? But as this progressed, I agree with what Jason said. It felt like an hour. And as it was going through, and I was like, this is so exciting, I actually had to look at the time code a couple times to be like, wow, is this really as short as I think it is? Because it moved so well and it breathed so well. And, I just loved the storyline. And I'll tell you what, the third thing I learned was this. If 50-year-old Yoda Jr. can lift up a mud horn, then listen, Yoda lifting up Luke's X-Wing and Empire was a piece of cake.
Yeah. Well,
it took a lot. It took a lot out of that little Yoda baby, though.
Knocked him out for days.
It did. But he was only 50, and the Yoda we got in Empire was like 750 years old at that point, maybe. So
I appreciate the only 50 line. Let me tell you that. But
it's only 50, bro. Hey, listen. Hey. Jimmy, I turned 43. I turned 43, bro. So I'm here.
Happy birthday!
I'm
happy birthday.
Feeling it. Thanks, brother.
That's awesome.
But the other thing I just wanted to say real quick is that the whole idea. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch the Star Wars show or if you watched that.
Yeah, I watched it.
One thing Filoni was just talking about the last episode they uploaded that I thought was brilliant about how this series of you have someone who's in a helmet, right? And I hearken it back to like David Prowse and Jeremy Bulloch, like in the original Boba Fett. Dave was talking about Pascal being, in this helmet and using that T visor as almost a cowboy hat.
Right, like the brim
and
of the
I thought
hat.
that was like the coolest. Yes, and I thought that was like the coolest thing because you get so many feels and vibes just without any kind of real, facial. It's almost like Anthony Daniels as 3PO.
Right,
the magic he did. We're getting that same thing.
Yeah.
And dude, guys, I prepared for this. I tell you what, I prepared for the second episode. I popped in my old TDK VHS of Return of the Jedi, recorded off HBO back in like 87, maybe it was.
Wow.
And I watched that on this terrible old CRT monitor, and then I watched tonight's episode. And I'm telling you what, man, this just feels so good to be a Star Wars fan right now.
Boy, it does.
And I know not everybody listening to you guys is going to get that OT vibe, but I know you guys do. And I appreciate y'all. And man, it just feels so good, so damn good.
It does. Hey, happy birthday to you. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
brother.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate the call, and all the best to you. Oh my gosh, guys, we could go on, but you know what? We've only got a few more days, and we're going to have a week here. We're going to have another episode of The Mandalorian, and so Jim, remember we were talking about the IMDb details, and we were concerned about Nick Nolte maybe only being in one episode. Well, he's up to 2 now.
Well, those IMDb stats, they have changed.
Oh, have they? Okay,
they have changed, and you have Pedro Pascal still being the only cast member who is registering all 8 episodes, followed by a guy named Kyle Pasek who plays a Jawa, and he is slated for 7 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So something tells me we're going to be seeing more Jawas in this show.
Yeah.
And father and mother appear in 4 episodes. I have to assume that those are the characters we saw dressed in magenta in the flashback sequences in episode 1. You have a few others really not putting in too much time as far as episodes go. You do have Nick Nolte here on IMDb credited as the character of Queel for 2 episodes.
Oh.
And Grief Karga still only registers 1 episode. Werner Herzog still only registers 1 episode. And Taika Waititi only registers 1 episode. Notably absent from this list is the person whose name I'm totally spacing right now.
The Imperial, right?
Right. He's not. No, well, that would. Are you thinking of Esposito Giancarlo?
Yes, I'm thinking of Giancarlo.
And I'm also thinking of Gina Carano, who I'm not seeing on this list. So this is gradually being updated. Yeah, it's a work in progress. This is a work in progress.
And so much of it is under wraps. I think that's all that they've been able to confirm. That's all that means, right?
Yeah, that's what I think so too. So, you just have to be careful what you see online and stuff, and, take it with a grain of salt, as Billy Mack says. Yeah. A grain of salt. Hey, the Werner Herzog thing. I kind of got to the bottom of this mystery. We've been talking for a few weeks on the show about what is it about Werner Herzog? Why are millennials and Gen Z people really just like?
Are they just so losing themselves over this guy?
What is it? Well, I got to the bottom of it. I went to my expert Generation Z cast member, and that would be my son Michael, who's 20 years old.
Okay.
And because he came up to me, he was like on
Werner
Herzog in a Mandalorian. I'm like, all right, dude, tell me.
It's like on The Simpsons or something.
Tell me.
Is that it?
Settle down, Billy. Would you let me talk?
That was a guess. I got it.
I said, what is it about this guy? And he goes, well, he's a great German filmmaker. I said, there's a lot of great German filmmakers. What is it about Werner Herzog that gets you guys so excited? He goes, well, he does a lot of documentaries. And so I said, a lot of people do documentaries. What is it about Werner Herzog that gets you so excited? He said, well, he did appear in an episode of Rick and Morty. And I was like, aha!
That's it? That's it? Rick and Morty.
Simpsons. And he was on The Simpsons. Billy Mack peed all over my story there at the very beginning. Didn't let me get through it. But yes, he did.
That was a good guess, though. You got to admit.
It was a good guess. I wasn't asking for a guess, though. I was doing an investigative report. This is why you're not on the weekly show regularly. And this is why we often make you do puppeteering, because you pull off stuff like this.
Oh,
all right.
Will we get the Lando puppet to join us on an after show? Maybe
he's got to have a reason to appear.
Well, he does. That's true. We can't shoehorn him in and just every little thing we
need
do.
Like a cameo from Lobot or something, and then we could get the expert analysis.
Well, what a great time this has been talking about the second episode of the first season of The Mandalorian, The Child. I am so in on this series. Call me a shill, call me whatever. It just feels so good. It just feels so good. And I had so much fun. Damn, this was a fun 30 minutes watching it. And it was an even more fun 90 minutes talking about it with all of you. Thanks to all the callers for staying up late with us. Thank you, brother Billy Mack, for hanging with us. Bill, we'll see you. I'll see you in another few weeks here in Northeast Ohio for Skywalker Rises in Ohio. Tickets still available at playhousesquare.org. We're going to have a great time. We're going to go see the movie, and then we're going to break it all down with a live podcast from the Kennedy's Cabaret Theater at Playhouse Square, downtown Cleveland. Looking forward to having you with us. Also, if you'd like to hang with us in between shows, you can do so. We'd love to have that communication from you. You can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, as well as email. You can send us an email, show@rebelforceradio.com. You can also leave us a voicemail. I think it's what's the number? 866. I'm losing it. I'm looking at the call-in number.
Website. All the info's on the website.
It's all there at rebelforceradio.com. And We're having a great time talking about Mandalorian. We're so glad you're along the ride with us. Jim, any final thoughts on The Mandalorian, Episode 2? I'm kind of springing this on you, but it is sort of a tradition.
Well, I think we're starting to see early signs of the evolution of this character and changes he will be going through on this particular adventure. His connection to this Force child is pretty much starting to come to the surface now, where he realizes that he might be in the possession of something that means more than just a payday. And so I think we're going to see him evolve from bounty hunting being a priority to doing the right thing. And we already got a little shades of that in episode 1 when he stopped the IG unit from executing the baby. And now the little Yoda is starting to display some really incredible skills in connection to the Force. And I think the Mandalorian himself will be he'll come to realize that it's probably more important to protect the infant Yoda than to claim his prize. However, we have seen a lot of shots of this very same Mandalorian character wearing full-on silver Beskar armor. So I think he does eventually get that payday from Werner Herzog. Yeah, I think he does get that payday. But does the baby fall then into the possession of these Imperial remnants?
Well, we're all thinking that this is the bounty hunter with the heart of gold. Who knows? He might just be more than happy to turn that little youngling over to Werner Herzog and his Imperial goons.
Yeah, there are things, too, that also indicate that this guy is as cold-hearted as they come. Yeah. And he's not going to take any crap from anyone. So, especially a bunch of little Jawas.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us here as we look at Episode 2 of Season 1 of The Mandalorian, The Child. Thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you next time as we take a look at the Episode 3. We don't have a name for it. I don't think that any of those have been leaked or...
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Yeah, but we know that we're going to be looking at these once a week. All right, we're out of here.
There are one more thing. There are some story synopsises out there, though, and also Pedro Pascal apparently had leaked the actual name of the Mandalorian. I'm not spoiling that on this show, but I'm not
off the air. I want to hear that. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, very much. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
Jimmy Mack.
And I'm Billy Mack.
And remember...
What was it? What?
Spoken.
There he is.
We'll see you next time. Later.
Good night.